The rose appeared on her desk the morning after she'd buried 19 people in a single day. Rose Zimmerman stood in the doorway of her office, keys still in hand, staring at the white bloom lying across her appointment book. The building's alarm had been armed when she arrived. She'd unlocked the door herself. The windows were sealed shut, had been since the renovation 3 years ago when the entire tower was purchased by some holding company with a name she could never quite remember. She set her coffee down and picked up the flower. It was perfect. Not a single petal bruised, the stem cut clean, no water source to keep it fresh, yet it looked like it had just been plucked from a garden that didn't exist anywhere in this steel and glass city. The weight of it in her palm felt heavier than it should, like it carried more than just itself. Rose checked the lock again. Solid. She checked the windows. Sealed. She stood in the center of her small office and turned slowly, looking for any sign of entry, any explanation that made sense. Nothing. She should have called security. She should have reported it. Instead, she filled a coffee mug with water from the bathroom down the hall and placed the rose inside, setting it on the corner of her desk where the morning light would catch it. Then she sat down, opened her calendar, and prepared for her first appointment of the day, a mother who'd lost her son in the bus crash, whose grief was so raw Rose had tasted it in the air at the funeral. The rose stayed. That night, she locked her office door carefully, set the alarm herself, and went home to her apartment where she ate microwaved soup standing over the sink and fell asleep with her clothes still on. The next morning, there was another rose. This one was placed directly in the center of her keyboard, lying across the spacebar like it was waiting for her. Rose picked it up with hands that trembled slightly. 2 roses now. 2 impossible roses. She added it to the mug. By the end of the week, she had 7 roses crowding her desk in various containers. The mug, a water glass, an empty vase she'd found in the break room, and a takeout container she'd washed 3 times. Her office smelled like a garden. Her clients commented on it, their grief-worn faces softening slightly when they entered and caught the scent. "They're beautiful," said Margaret Hollis, the mother who'd lost her son. "Where did you get them?" "I don't know," Rose said honestly. "They just appear." Margaret smiled, the first real smile Rose had seen on her face since the funeral. "Maybe Daniel sent them. Maybe he's telling you thank you for everything you did." Rose didn't believe in ghosts. She'd worked in grief counseling for 8 years, had coordinated over 200 funerals, had held the hands of more bereaved families than she could count, and she'd never once felt the presence of the dead. She believed in flowers and paperwork and the small kindnesses that help people survive their worst days. She believed in locked doors and security systems and rational explanations. But the roses kept coming. After 2 weeks, she stopped checking the locks. After 3, she started looking forward to the discovery each morning, that moment of walking in and scanning her desk to see where the rose would be. Sometimes it was on her chair. Sometimes it was balanced on top of her computer monitor. Once, it was tucked into the leaves of the plant by her window, white against green, so perfectly placed it looked like it had grown there. She never saw who left them. She arrived earlier and earlier, coming in before dawn, but the roses were always already there, waiting in the dark. "You have an admirer," said Chen from HR when he stopped by to drop off paperwork. He nodded at the collection of vases now lining her windowsill. "That's some serious dedication." "I don't even know who it is," Rose said. "Maybe that's the point." Chen shrugged. "Mystery is romantic." Rose didn't have time for romance. She barely had time to sleep. The bus crash had been followed by a house fire, then a workplace accident, then the slow, expected deaths that still hit families like unexpected blows. Her calendar was packed solid with appointments, her phone filled with calls from funeral homes and grieving relatives and lawyers handling estates. She gave and gave and gave, parceling out her attention and care like it was infinite, like she was infinite. The roses were the only thing she received. On the morning of the 30th day, Rose arrived to find the rose placed on a folded piece of paper. Her heart kicked against her ribs as she picked it up, unfolded it. The paper was blank. She turned it over. Nothing. Just expensive cardstock, cream-colored and thick, and a rose lying on top of it like an invitation to something she couldn't name. Rose sat down at her desk and pulled out her own notebook. She wrote carefully, "Thank you for the roses. They've made the hard days easier." She left the note on her desk that night, weighted down with her stapler. The next morning, the note was gone. In its place, another rose and another blank piece of cardstock. Rose smiled despite herself. She wrote, "You don't have to keep the mystery. You can tell me who you are." The next morning, a rose, blank paper, and her note from the previous day returned to her with a single word written in elegant script at the bottom of her message. No. No? Rose said out loud to her empty office. She picked up a pen. You're very stubborn. The response came the next day, written below her words. Yes. It became a game. Rose would write something, leave it on her desk, and find it returned the next morning with a brief response and another rose. The answers were always short, never more than a few words, but there was personality in them, a dry humor that made her laugh. Why roses? She asked. Because you deserve beautiful things, came the answer. How do you get in here? Carefully. Are you dangerous? Only to those who threaten what I care for. That answer made her pause. Rose read it 3 times, tracing the elegant handwriting with her fingertip. The script was old-fashioned, the kind of penmanship that belonged to another era. She thought about the security system, the locked doors, the impossible access. She thought about the roses that never wilted, that stayed fresh day after day in her office like they were somehow outside of time. She wrote, "What are you?" The next morning, her note was returned blank, her question unanswered, but the rose was red instead of white. Rose stared at it for a long time. Then she filled a new vase with water, placed the red rose in it, and set it in the center of her desk. That day she had 5 appointments, all of them heavy with grief. She listened to a widower talk about his wife of 40 years. She helped a teenager plan her father's funeral. She held the hand of a man who'd lost his daughter and didn't know how to keep living. She gave them her attention, her compassion, her steadiness. She gave them everything she had. When the last client left, Rose sat in her office in the fading afternoon light and realized she was exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted, hollowed out. She'd been running on empty for weeks, maybe months, filling everyone else's cups while her own ran dry. The red rose caught the last of the sunlight, glowing like an ember. Rose pulled out her notebook. "I'm tired," she wrote. "I don't know how to stop being tired." The next morning, there were 2 roses on her desk, one red, one white, and below her confession, a response, "Then rest. I will keep watch." Something in her chest cracked open. Rose pressed her hand to her sternum, feeling the ache of it, and for the first time in 8 years, she called in sick to work. She went home, climbed into bed, and slept for 14 hours straight. When she returned the next day, there was a rose on her desk and a new chair in the corner of her office. It was expensive, leather and wood, the kind of chair that looked like it belonged in a library in an old manor house. There was a note tied to the arm with ribbon, for resting. Rose sat in the chair. It was the most comfortable thing she'd ever experienced. She curled up in it, her feet tucked under her, and felt something in her shoulders finally relax. She left a note that night. "Thank you. For the chair. For caring." The response, "You have cared for so many. Let me care for you." The roses continued. The notes continued. Rose found herself writing more, sharing more. She told her mysterious benefactor about her day, about the clients who broke her heart, about the small victories and the overwhelming losses. She told him about the way grief smelled like rain and empty rooms, about the weight of other people's sorrow, about the responsibility she felt to hold steady when everything else was falling apart. And he answered, not with advice or platitudes, but with understanding, with small kindnesses. A better lamp appeared in her office when she mentioned the fluorescent lights gave her headaches. A soft blanket materialized on the chair when she wrote about being cold. A French press and expensive coffee showed up after she joked about the break room's terrible machine. "Someone is definitely courting you," Chen said, eyeing the new additions to her office. "This is beyond admirer territory. This is full-scale romantic campaign." "I've never even seen him," Rose said. "Him? So you do know something." Rose blushed. "The handwriting feels masculine, that's all." But it was more than that. She'd started to feel a presence around her, something watchful and protective. When she walked to her car at night, she felt less alone. When she lay awake at 3 in the morning, anxious about a client in crisis, she felt like someone was listening. It should have been unsettling. Instead, it was comforting. She wrote, "Are you always watching?" The answer, not always, but often. "Does it bother you?" "It should," she wrote back, "but it doesn't. It makes me feel safe." "Good. You are safe. I promise you that." 3 months after the first rose appeared, winter arrived in full force. The city turned gray and frozen, ice coating the streets, snow threatening in the heavy clouds. Rose's caseload increased as it always did in winter. Something about the cold and dark made grief heavier, harder to bear. She worked late into the evenings, her office a warm bubble of light in the darkening building. One night, she stayed until past midnight, finishing paperwork for a funeral that would happen the next day. When she finally locked up and headed for the elevator, she felt that familiar presence stronger than ever, like someone was walking beside her through the empty hallways. "I know you're there," she said quietly to the air. "I don't know how I know, but I do." The elevator arrived. The doors opened. Rose stepped inside and turned around, looking out at the empty hallway. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." The elevator doors closed. Rose could have sworn she heard a voice in the silence, so quiet it might have been her imagination. "You are welcome, Rose." He knew her name, of course he did, but hearing it, even in her imagination, sent warmth through her chest. The next morning, there was a rose on her desk and a note in that elegant script. "You work too hard." Rose wrote back. "Says the person who breaks into my office every single night. I do not break in. I own the building." Rose stared at that response for a full minute. Then she grabbed her phone and looked up the holding company that owned the tower, Ravencroft Enterprises. She'd never paid attention to it before, but now she dug deeper, searching for information. The company was private, nearly impossible to research. No website, no social media presence, just a shell of paperwork and legal entities. The registered agent was a law firm downtown that, when she called, politely refused to provide any information about their client. She wrote, "Ravencroft. That's you?" "Yes, why hide?" "Not hiding, protecting. Protecting what?" "Everything I hold dear." Rose sat back in her chair, her heart beating fast. She looked around her office at the roses covering every surface, at the chair and the lamp and the blanket, at the evidence of months of careful, patient attention. Someone with enormous resources had been caring for her, watching over her, leaving gifts like breadcrumbs leading to a truth she was only beginning to understand. She wrote, "I want to meet you." The next morning, her note was returned unanswered. No response written below her words, just a white rose and silence. Rose tried again. "Please, I want to know who you are." Again, no response. Days passed. The roses continued, but the conversation stopped. Every note she left came back blank, her questions ignored. It stung worse than she expected. She'd gotten used to the dialogue, to the connection. Losing it felt like losing something vital. She stopped writing notes. If he wanted silence, she'd give him silence. A week later, Chen knocked on her door. "Hey, heads up, the owner of the building is coming by tomorrow. Some kind of inspection. Security sent out a memo." Rose looked up from her computer. "The owner?" "Yeah, first time in the 3 years I've worked here. Apparently he's very private. Rich recluse type." Chen waggled his eyebrows. "Maybe it's your mysterious Rose guy." "Don't be ridiculous," Rose said, but her pulse quickened. That night she stayed late again, finishing paperwork. At 8 o'clock, the lights in the hallway outside her office flickered. Rose frowned and stood up, walking to the door. The hallway was empty, but she could see someone at the far end, near the elevators. A man. Tall, dressed in dark clothes. As she watched, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. Rose's heart hammered. She grabbed her coat and her bag and hurried down the hallway, but when she rounded the corner, there was no one there. Just empty hallway and the elevator doors closing. She was imagining things. She had to be. The next morning, Rose arrived early and dressed more carefully than usual. She told herself it was stupid, that Chen's comment meant nothing, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. At 10 o'clock, her phone rang. The receptionist downstairs, breathless. "Ms. Zimmerman, Mr. Ravencroft is here to see you." Rose's mouth went dry. Send him up. She stood behind her desk, gripping the edge of it, surrounded by her forest of roses. Her office smelled like a garden. Her office looked like a shrine to impossible courtship. She'd never felt more exposed. The knock on her door was soft, polite. "Come in," Rose said. The door opened. The man who entered was not what she expected. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with hair so white it seemed to glow in the fluorescent light. His skin was pale, almost luminous, and his eyes were dark, nearly black. He wore an expensive suit tailored perfectly to his frame, and he moved with a grace that seemed inhuman, like he was gliding rather than walking. He was beautiful. Terrifyingly, inhumanly beautiful. He stopped just inside the door, his dark eyes scanning the room, taking in the roses, the chair, the lamp. Then his gaze landed on Rose and held. "Miss Zimmerman," he said. His voice was like silk over stone, accented in a way she couldn't place. "I am Henrik Ravencroft." Rose stared at him. Henrik. The man who'd been leaving roses on her desk for months. The man who'd been caring for her, watching over her, writing her notes in elegant script. He was standing in her office, real and solid and impossible. "You're him," she whispered. "Yes." "How did you, the door, the locks, all of it?" "I have certain advantages," Henrik said carefully. "I'm not like other men." Rose laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound. "No kidding. Are you even human?" Henrik's expression didn't change. "No." The single word hung in the air between them. Rose felt like the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. She gripped the desk harder, her knuckles white. "What are you?" Henrik tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You know, I believe you have known for some time, deep down. You are too intelligent not to have guessed." "Vampire," Rose said. The word felt absurd coming out of her mouth. "You're a vampire." "Yes." Rose sat down hard in her desk chair. Henrik didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood by the door like he was giving her space to process. Her mind spun. Vampires were real. Vampires were real, and one had been leaving her roses for 3 months, and he owned her building, and he was standing in her office looking at her with eyes that had probably seen centuries. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why the roses? Why me?" Henrik was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "Centuries ago, I loved a mortal woman. I never told her. I watched her live her life, grow old, die, and she never knew. I vowed then that I would never make that mistake again. That if I ever cared for someone, I would find a way to show them, even if I could not speak the words." He paused. "You are extraordinary, Rose Zimmerman. You give so much of yourself to others. You hold their grief and their pain, and you help them survive it. You are kind and strong, and you deserve to be cared for in return. So I left you roses, to show you that someone sees you, that someone values you." Rose's eyes burned. "You watched me grieve alone for months." Henrik flinched, the first crack in his controlled demeanor. "Yes. All those late nights when I was exhausted and overwhelmed and barely holding it together. You were there, and you didn't say anything. I did not think you would want—" "You didn't think, period." Rose stood up, anger flaring hot in her chest. "You assumed. You decided what I needed without asking me. Do you know how lonely I've been? Do you know how hard it is to take care of everyone else while feeling like no one sees you, no one cares?" Her voice cracked. "And you were there the whole time, and you just watched." Henrik's face was anguished. "I did not want to frighten you. I did not want to burden you with what I am. So instead you burdened me with mystery and isolation and one-sided conversation." Rose wiped at her eyes furiously. "I don't care that you're a vampire, Henrik. I care that you let me suffer alone when you could have just talked to me." "I did not know how," Henrik said quietly. "I am a king, Rose. I have ruled my kind for over 600 years. I command territories and manage conflicts and negotiate treaties, but with you I was afraid. I have not felt fear in centuries. And you unmade me with your strength and your kindness. I did not know how to approach you. So I left roses, like a coward." Rose stared at him. Henrik met her gaze steadily, his ancient eyes full of an emotion that looked achingly human. "A king," Rose said flatly. "You're a vampire king. Yes? Of course you are." She laughed again, that same slightly hysterical sound. Of course the person leaving me roses is vampire royalty. Why would my life be simple? I am sorry, Henrik said. Truly, I handled this poorly. I thought I was giving you something precious. Instead, I gave you loneliness in a different form. He turned toward the door. Rose's heart lurched. Wait, where are you going? You are angry, rightfully so. I will leave you in peace. No. Rose moved around her desk closer to him. Not too close, but closer. Don't go. I'm angry, but I'm also grateful and confused and completely overwhelmed. You don't get to drop a bomb like I'm a vampire king who's been courting you for months and then just disappear. Henrik turned back to her. Something like hope flickered across his face. What would you have me do? Talk to me, Rose said. Actually talk to me. Not in notes, not in silence. Use your words and have a conversation. I'm not skilled at conversation, Henrik admitted. Not anymore. I spend most of my time in my court, managing my kind. Surface interaction with mortals is rare for me. Then learn, Rose said, because if you want to keep leaving me roses, if you want to keep caring for me, then I need more than gestures. I need presence. I need honesty. I need you to show up even when it's hard. Henrik nodded slowly. I can do that. I will do that if you will allow me. And you have to stop watching me without telling me. That's creepy, even if your intentions are good. Agreed. Henrik hesitated, then added, There's something you should know. The reason I revealed myself now, rather than continuing as I was. What? There's a threat. Another vampire? From the Winter Court. His name is Constantine, and he has learned of my interest in you. He believes mortals are beneath us, weak and disposable. He has threatened you to prove a point, to challenge my authority. I could not remain hidden any longer, not if it meant leaving you vulnerable. Rose's blood went cold. Someone wants to hurt me because of you? Yes. Henrik's voice turned hard, dangerous, but I will not allow it. You are under my protection now, publicly and completely. No one will touch you. I'm not helpless, Rose said. I know you are not helpless. You are one of the strongest people I have ever encountered, and I have lived a very long time. But you are mortal, and Constantine is ancient and cruel. This is my world, Rose. Let me protect you in it. Rose wanted to argue. She'd spent her entire life taking care of herself, managing her own problems, staying independent. But she looked at Henrik's face, at the fierce determination there, and realized this wasn't about him thinking she was weak. This was about him caring, about him finally stepping out of the shadows to stand beside her. Okay, she said, but you have to tell me everything. About the threat, about your world, about what being under your protection means. No more secrets. No more secrets, Henrik agreed. They stood there in her office, surrounded by roses, and Rose felt the weight of everything shifting. Her life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. It had also gotten infinitely more interesting. I have appointments today, she said. People who need me. I know. I will not interfere with your work, but I will have guards stationed nearby. You will not see them, but they will be there. Invisible vampire bodyguards. Great. That's totally normal. Henrik's lips quirked, the barest hint of a smile. Nothing about this is normal. Tell me about it. Rose glanced at the clock. I have someone coming in 15 minutes, but tonight, after work, I want you to come back. We'll talk. Really talk. I will be here, Henrik said. I promise. He left as silently as he'd arrived, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Rose stood in her office, her heart racing, her mind spinning, and looked at the roses covering every surface. A vampire king had been courting her. A vampire king was protecting her from threats she couldn't even comprehend. A vampire king had just promised to show up and have an actual conversation. Her life had definitely gotten weird. The day passed in a blur of appointments and phone calls, but Rose felt different, more alert. She kept expecting to see Henrik or to sense that watchful presence she'd gotten used to. Instead, she felt other presences, subtler and more distant. The guards he'd mentioned, probably. It should have been unsettling. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in a protective blanket. At 6 o'clock, her last client left. Rose tidied her office, gathering files and organizing paperwork, trying to keep her hands busy while her mind raced. What did you even talk about with the Vampire King? What was the protocol? At 7, there was a knock on her door. Rose's pulse jumped. Come in. Henrik entered, and Rose noticed things she'd missed earlier in her shock. The way he moved, fluid and predatory. The way his eyes caught the light, reflecting like an animal's. The way he seemed to take up more space than his physical body should, his presence expanding to fill the room. Hi, Rose said, feeling suddenly awkward. Hello? Henrik closed the door behind him and stood there, looking almost uncertain. It was strange seeing someone so powerful look unsure. You can sit, Rose said, gesturing to the chair he'd given her. I mean, you gave me that chair. You should use it. Henrik sat, folding his tall frame into the chair with that inhuman grace. Rose perched on the edge of her desk, facing him. They looked at each other for a long moment. This is weird, Rose said finally. Yes, Henrik agreed. I'm not accustomed to being nervous. It is a novel experience. You're nervous? Terrified, actually. Rose blinked. Of me. Of disappointing you. Of saying the wrong thing. Of losing this fragile connection before it has a chance to become something real. Henrik's dark eyes were intense on hers. I have negotiated with kings and warlords. I have fought in battles that shaped history. But sitting here with you, trying to explain myself, is the most difficult thing I have done in decades. Something in Rose's chest softened. I'm scared too. You're a vampire, a king. You've lived for centuries. I'm just a grief counselor from Seattle who drinks too much coffee and can barely pay her student loans. We're not exactly in the same league. You are wrong, Henrik said quietly. You give people hope in their darkest moments. You hold space for their pain and help them survive it. You are not just anything. Rose, you are remarkable. Rose felt her eyes burn again. You keep saying things like that. Because they are true. Tell me about the threat, Rose said, needing to change the subject before she started crying. This Constantine person. Why does he care about me? Henrik's expression darkened. Constantine rules the Winter Court, a faction of our kind that believes in the old ways, complete separation from mortals. They see humans as food and servants, nothing more. When word spread that I had taken an interest in a mortal woman, Constantine saw an opportunity to challenge me, to make me look weak in front of the other courts. How did word spread? I was not as careful as I should have been. My people noticed my absences, my distraction. In our world, information is currency. Someone talked and Constantine listened. What will he do? He has demanded I appear before the Winter Court to explain myself, to justify my interest in you. If I refuse, it is an insult that could lead to conflict between our factions. If I go, I must take you with me to prove you are not some passing fancy, that my interest is genuine and worthy of respect. Rose's stomach dropped. You want me to go to a vampire court? I want you to be safe. The safest place for you right now is beside me, where every vampire in the city can see that you are under my direct protection. Constantine cannot touch you without declaring war, and he is not ready for that. Yet, Rose said. Yet, Henrik agreed. But he is posturing, testing boundaries. Once he sees that you are not afraid, that you understand our world and carry yourself with dignity, he will back down. Constantine respects strength, even in mortals. When is this meeting? 3 days. The winter solstice. The longest night of the year, which is symbolically important in our culture. Rose rubbed her temples. 3 days to prepare to meet a court of vampires who think I'm beneath them. No pressure. You do not have to do this, Henrik said. I can find another way. I can fight Constantine if necessary. I will not force you into my world if you do not wish to be there. Rose looked at him, really looked at him. Henrik sat in the chair he'd given her, in the office he owned, surrounded by the roses he'd left for months. He'd been protecting her, caring for her, trying in his own broken way to show her she mattered. And now he was offering to go to war rather than put her in an uncomfortable situation. You really care about me, Rose said softly. Yes, Henrik said. More than I have cared for anyone in centuries. More than I thought I was capable of caring. Why? You barely know me. I have watched you for months. I have read your words, seen your kindness, witnessed your strength. I know the parts of you that matter. I know your heart. Henrik leaned forward slightly. And I want to know more. I want to know everything, your favorite food and the books you read and the music you listen to when you are sad. I want to know what makes you laugh and what makes you angry and what you dream about when you sleep. I want to spend years learning you, Rose, if you will let me. Rose's breath caught. That's the most you've said at once since I met you. Henrik's lips quirked again, that almost smile. You told me to use my words. I did. Rose slid off the desk and moved to stand in front of him. She was close enough now to see the faint lines around his eyes, the only sign of age on his ageless face. I'll go to your court. I'll meet Constantine. But not because you need me to, because I want to understand your world. Because I want to know all of you too, including the parts that are strange and scary and completely outside my experience. Henrik stood, and suddenly they were inches apart. He was so tall Rose had to tilt her head back to look at him. You are braver than you know. Or stupider, Rose said. Jury's still out. May I touch you? Henrik asked. I have wanted to for so long, but I did not know if it would be welcome. Rose's heart hammered. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Henrik reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed his fingers along her jaw. His skin was cool, not cold, but definitely not warm, and his touch was impossibly gentle. You are real, he murmured. I have watched you for so long, you felt like a dream. But you are real. So are you, Rose whispered. She lifted her own hand and touched his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. I kept thinking I was making you up, that the roses were some kind of delusion brought on by stress. The roses are real. I am real. This is real. Rose looked up at him, at this impossible man who was not a man at all, and felt something slot into place in her chest. She'd been alone for so long, carrying everyone else's grief and pain, holding herself together through sheer will. And here was someone who wanted to carry her for a change, who saw her exhaustion and her strength and valued both. I don't know how this works, she admitted. You're immortal. I'm not. You're royalty. I'm nobody. You drink blood and I drink overpriced lattes. How do we make sense together? I do not know, Henrik said honestly, but I would like to try. If you would like to try. Rose thought about the roses. She thought about the notes in the chair and the lamp and all the small kindnesses that had sustained her through the hardest months of her life. She thought about Henrik's voice in the hallway, thanking her. She thought about his face when he'd admitted he was afraid. Okay, she said. Let's try. Henrik's smile was radiant, transforming his face from beautiful to devastating. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I haven't met your vampire court. I might embarrass you horribly. Impossible, Henrik said. You could never embarrass me. The next 3 days were a crash course in vampire politics and culture. Henrik came to Rose's office every evening after her last appointment, and they talked for hours. He explained the structure of vampire society, the courts, the territories, the ancient laws that governed their kind. He told her about his own history, about being turned during a plague in the 14th century, about rising through the ranks of vampire hierarchy through a combination of strength, strategy, and stubborn refusal to bow to anyone. I was a minor lord in life, Henrik said one evening. I owned land, commanded soldiers. But I was not important. When I became a vampire, I discovered I had a talent for immortality, for reading people, for anticipating threats, for building alliances. Within a century, I controlled the entire region. Within 2 centuries, I was a king. And you've ruled since then? Rose asked. With occasional challenges, yes. Our kind respects power, but they also crave it. There are always ambitious vampires who think they could rule better than I do. Constantine is one of them, though he lacks the patience for true kingship. He is content to rule his winter court and cause trouble. What happens if he really challenges you? Then I remove him. Henrik's voice was cold. Permanently, Rose shivered. It was easy to forget when Henrik was sitting in her office speaking quietly about history, that he was a predator, that he had killed, probably many times, that the man she was growing to care for was also a king who'd held power through violence and fear. You are afraid of me now, Henrik observed. A little, Rose admitted. Not of you hurting me, but of what you're capable of the parts of you that are so far from human. Henrik nodded slowly. I will not lie to you about what I am. I have done terrible things in my long life. I have killed enemies and rivals. I have made decisions that cost lives. I'm not a good man, Rose. I'm not even a man anymore. I'm a king first, and everything I do is in service of protecting my people and maintaining the order that keeps both vampires and mortals safe. Safe? Rose frowned. How does killing people keep mortals safe? Because the alternative is chaos. If I do not maintain control, if I let challenges go unanswered, then the more violent factions of our kind will rise up. The ones who see mortals as prey, who would hunt freely and openly. I enforce the blood laws. I ensure that feeding is consensual and compensated, that no mortal is killed or turned without consent, that our existence remains secret enough to avoid mass panic. I am not a hero, but I am a necessary evil. Rose absorbed that. It made a kind of brutal sense. So you're like vampire government? Essentially, yes, though with more direct and permanent consequences for lawbreaking. And Constantine wants to change that. Go back to the old ways? Some of his court do. Constantine himself is more interested in power than ideology. He uses the old guard's dissatisfaction to build his base, but he would be just as happy ruling under the current system if he were the one in charge. So this is really about him wanting your throne. Yes, you are merely a convenient excuse to force a confrontation. Rose leaned back in her chair, processing. Your life is so complicated. It is about to become yours as well, if you truly wish to be part of it. I do, Rose said. I think. Ask me again after I meet Constantine. On the evening before the winter solstice, Henrik brought Rose to his home. She'd been expecting something gothic and dramatic, maybe a castle on the outskirts of the city. Instead, he led her to the top floor of her own building, through a private elevator she'd never known existed, into a penthouse that took her breath away. The space was enormous, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. The furniture was a mix of antique and modern, pieces that looked like they'd been collected over centuries, arranged with careful taste. There were bookshelves lining the walls, packed with volumes in dozens of languages. Art hung in gilded frames, paintings that Rose suspected were originals worth millions. You live here? She breathed. Above my office? I told you I was always close by, Henrik said. I wanted to be near you. Rose turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. This is insane. Your home is insane. Wait until you see the library. He showed her through the penthouse, pointing out his favorite pieces, telling her the stories behind them. This painting he'd commissioned from an artist in Venice in the 1600s. That sculpture he'd stolen from a rival's home during a conflict in Paris. The tapestry in the hallway had been a gift from a queen he'd helped protect from assassination. Every object had a history. Every piece of furniture had witnessed centuries. Rose felt like she was walking through a museum dedicated to Henrik's impossibly long life. The library was, as promised, spectacular. 2 stories of books with a wrought iron spiral staircase leading to the second level. There were reading nooks with leather chairs, a fireplace that probably didn't work but looked beautiful anyway, and a ladder on rails for reaching the highest shelves. Oh my God, Rose whispered. This is the most beautiful room I've ever seen. I thought you might like it, Henrik said, pleased. You are welcome here any time. The books, the space, all of it. Rose walked along the shelves, reading spines, seeing titles in English and Latin and languages she couldn't identify. Have you read all of these? Most of them, some multiple times. Reading is one of the few pleasures of immortality that never grows stale. What else? Rose asked. What other pleasures? Henrik looked at her steadily. I'm discovering new ones. Watching you exist in my space, for example. Seeing you smile, hearing you laugh. These are pleasures I'd forgotten were possible. Rose's cheeks heated. You can't just say things like that. Why not? They are true. Because they make me feel... Rose trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. How do they make you feel? Henrik moved closer, his dark eyes intent on her face. Seen, Rose said quietly. Special. Like I matter. You do matter. You matter immensely. They stood in the library surrounded by centuries of knowledge, and Rose felt the last of her defenses crumbling. She'd been so careful for so long, keeping people at arm's length, never letting anyone too close. It was safer that way, easier to manage her demanding job and her exhausting life. But Henrik had slipped past her walls with patient persistence, and now she was here, in his home, feeling things she hadn't let herself feel in years. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of tomorrow, of Constantine, of all of this. But I'm also scared of how much I'm starting to care about you. We barely know each other. This is happening so fast." "We have time," Henrik said. "I have nothing but time, and I will give you as much of it as you need. But I don't have nothing but time. I'm mortal. I'm going to age and die, and you're going to stay exactly like this. Then we will deal with that when the moment comes. There are options, if you ever wish to explore them. But that is a conversation for another day, when we have built something strong enough to sustain it. For now, all I ask is that you give us a chance. Let me care for you. Let me be beside you. Let me learn who you are and let you learn who I am. The rest will sort itself out." Rose wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that a mortal and an immortal could build something real, that the vast differences between them didn't matter as much as the connection they were forming. "Okay, one day at a time." "One day at a time," Henrik agreed. He held out his hand. "Come, I want to show you one more thing." Rose took his hand, marveling at the coolness of his skin, the strength in his fingers. He led her through the penthouse to a door she'd assumed was a closet. Instead, it opened onto a staircase leading up. "There's more?" Rose asked. "The roof," Henrik said. "I thought we could watch the sunrise together. You should rest before tomorrow night, and dawn is only a few hours away. I want to give you something peaceful before we face the winter court." They climbed the stairs and emerged onto a rooftop garden that made Rose gasp. It was winter, so most of the plants were dormant, but she could see the bones of the space, raised beds and trellises, a small fountain, comfortable seating areas arranged to take advantage of the view. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, there were roses. White roses, red roses, pink roses, some blooming impossibly despite the cold. "You grew them," Rose said. "All the roses you left me, they came from here." "Yes, I have tended this garden for decades. Roses are resilient, and with the right care, they bloom even in winter. I thought it fitting." Rose walked through the garden, touching petals, breathing in the faint scent. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, the first hint of dawn coloring the clouds. "It's beautiful." "It will be more so in spring," Henrik said, "if you are willing to wait and see it." "Are you asking me to stick around?" "I'm asking you to consider it. This could be your home too, if you wished. Not now, not immediately, but someday, if we both want it." Rose turned to face him. Henrik stood in his garden, surrounded by the roses he'd grown and tended, and the rising sun caught his white hair and pale skin, making him look ethereal and impossibly beautiful. "You're going to burn," she said suddenly. "The sun. You need to go inside." "I have a few minutes," Henrik said. "I wanted to see the sunrise with you. I have not watched dawn in centuries." "Don't hurt yourself for me," Rose said, alarmed. "A little discomfort is worth it to share this with you." But he moved toward the door, and Rose followed him down the stairs back into the safety of the penthouse. "Do you sleep during the day?" Rose asked. "I rest, yes. Not sleep as you do, but a kind of dormancy. I will wake if needed, but it's easier to let the daylight hours pass." "Then I'll let you rest. I should go home anyway, get my own sleep before tonight." "Stay," Henrik said. "Please. There's a guest room. You will be safe here, and I will rest easier knowing you are close." Rose should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept some distance. Instead, she heard herself say, "Okay, I'll stay." Henrik's smile was brilliant. He showed her to a beautiful guest room with an enormous bed and an attached bathroom that looked like it belonged in a spa. "Rest. I will wake at sunset, and we will prepare for the winter court together." "Thank you," Rose said, "for all of this, for being patient with me. Thank you for giving me a chance, for seeing past what I am to who I am." Henrik hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Sleep well, Rose." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Rose stood in the center of the luxurious guest room, her forehead tingling where his lips had touched, and felt like her entire world had tilted on its axis. She climbed into the bed, which was absurdly comfortable, and expected to lie awake for hours, her mind spinning. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the feeling of safety that permeated Henrik's home. When she woke, the room was dark. Rose checked her phone. 8 o'clock in the evening. She'd slept for almost 12 hours. There was a note slipped under her door, written in Henrik's elegant script. "Good evening. Please join me when you are ready. There is clothing in the closet that should fit you if you wish to change for tonight." Rose opened the closet and found a dress hanging there, black and elegant and clearly expensive. There were shoes to match and simple jewelry laid out on a velvet tray. It should have been presumptuous, Henrik picking out clothes for her. Instead, it felt like care, like he'd anticipated her needs and met them. She showered in the incredible bathroom and dressed carefully, fixing her hair and makeup with the supplies that had been thoughtfully provided. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked sophisticated, put together, almost regal, ready to meet a vampire court. Rose took a deep breath and left the guest room. She found Henrik in the living room, dressed in a formal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a period drama. His white hair was pulled back from his face, and his dark eyes were serious. "You look beautiful," he said. "You look terrifying," Rose replied. "In a good way. Very kingly." Henrik's lips quirked. "That is the intention. I must remind Constantine who he is dealing with." He offered her his arm. "Are you ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They took the private elevator down, but instead of exiting into the building lobby, Henrik pressed a button Rose hadn't noticed before. The elevator descended further, past the ground floor, down into what must have been the building's sub-basement. When the doors opened, Rose found herself in an underground garage, except it was far too elegant to be a normal garage. The floor was polished stone, the lighting was subtle and warm, and there were only a handful of vehicles, all of them expensive and vintage. Henrik led her to a black car that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Is this a Rolls-Royce?" Rose asked. "1965 Silver Cloud. I've always appreciated classic automobiles." "Of course you have." A driver was waiting, a severe-looking man who nodded to Henrik and opened the back door for them. Rose slid inside, Henrik following. The interior was all leather and wood paneling and quiet luxury. "Where are we going?" Rose asked as the car pulled out of the garage into an underground tunnel she definitely hadn't known existed. "The Winter Court convenes beneath the city, in spaces that have existed far longer than the buildings above them. Seattle is young as cities go, but the land is old, and my kind have been here for centuries." "There's a secret vampire city under Seattle?" "Not a city, more like connected territories. Spaces carved out over time, claimed and defended. My own court is beneath the financial district. The Winter Court is beneath the old town, in chambers that date back to the city's founding." Rose watched the tunnel walls slide past. "I feel like I've fallen down a rabbit hole." "In a sense you have, but I will be with you every moment. You are not alone in this." The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber lined with more cars. The driver parked, and Henrik helped Rose out. They were in what looked like a parking garage designed by someone with unlimited funds and a taste for drama. The ceiling was vaulted stone, the pillars were carved with intricate designs, and everything was lit with what looked like actual torches, though Rose suspected they were gas-powered. "This way," Henrik said, guiding her toward an archway at the far end of the chamber. They walked through corridors of stone, passing other vampires who bowed to Henrik and stared at Rose with undisguised curiosity. Rose kept her head up, her shoulders back, channeling every ounce of confidence she'd ever possessed. She was a grief counselor. She'd faced rooms full of sobbing families, had managed funerals for multiple casualties, had held space for unspeakable pain. She could handle a room full of vampires. Probably. The corridor opened into a massive hall that took Rose's breath away. It was like stepping into a medieval great hall, except somehow more opulent. The ceiling soared overhead, held up by massive stone pillars. Tapestries hung on the walls and candelabras provided flickering light. At the far end of the hall, there was a raised dais with a throne carved from a single piece of black stone. Sitting on that throne was a vampire who could only be Constantine. He was tall and rail-thin, with white hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes that were chips of ice blue. He wore white and silver, and he lounged on his throne like a king in his own right, which Rose supposed he was. Around the hall, other vampires stood in clusters, all of them dressed formally, all of them turning to stare as Henrik and Rose entered. "Henrik Ravencroft!" Constantine called out, his voice echoing in the space. "How good of you to finally grace us with your presence, and you brought your mortal pet. How delightful!" Rose felt Henrik tense beside her, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "Constantine, thank you for your invitation to this gathering. May I present Rose Zimmerman, who is under my direct and personal protection, as my honored companion." Honored companion. Rose filed that away to ask about later, Constantine's pale eyes fixed on Rose. Honored companion. What an interesting designation. Tell me, mortal, do you understand what that means? Rose's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. It means I'm important to Henrik, and anyone who threatens me threatens him. I may not know all the details of your culture, but I understand the basics of protection and honor. A ripple went through the crowd. Constantine's eyebrows rose. She speaks, and with a spine no less. Perhaps you have chosen more wisely than I anticipated, Henrik. Rose is extraordinary, Henrik said, as you will see if you give her the chance. Oh, I intend to. Constantine stood, descending from his throne with inhuman grace. He glided across the hall toward them, and Rose had to force herself not to step back. Up close, he was even more unsettling, his beauty sharp and cold like a knife. Tell me, Rose Zimmerman, why should we accept you? You are mortal, fragile, temporary. You will age and die while Henrik remains unchanged. You bring nothing to our world except disruption and distraction. Why should we not simply eliminate the problem? Because I make Henrik happy, Rose said, proud that her voice didn't shake. And isn't that worth something? Happiness is rare, especially for immortals who have seen everything and done everything. If I bring him joy, if I give him something to care about, that makes him a better king. It makes him more connected to the world, more invested in protecting it. You should accept me because I make your world better by making Henrik better. Constantine stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sharp, cold sound. Clever little mortal, you argue like a diplomat. He glanced at Henrik. She is more than I expected. Very well, I will accept your honored companion on one condition. Name it, Henrik said. She must prove she can survive in our world. Not physically, I am not so crude as to demand trial by combat, but she must demonstrate that she understands what she is committing to, that she can walk among us without fear, that she can hold her own in our society. If she can do that, I will acknowledge your bond and withdraw my challenge. What did you have in mind? Henrik asked carefully. Constantine gestured to the hall. A simple test. Let her walk among us. Let her speak with my court, hear their concerns, answer their questions. If she can hold her own for 1 hour without cowering or running, I will accept that she is worthy of your protection. If she fails, he shrugged, then perhaps you will see that some connections are not meant to be. Henrik looked at Rose. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do, Rose said quietly. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to prove I can handle it, not just to Constantine, but to myself. Henrik's hand tightened on her arm. I will be watching. If anyone threatens you, if you need me, I will be there instantly. I know. Rose squared her shoulders and looked at Constantine. I accept your test. Constantine's smile was all teeth. Excellent. Let us begin. The next hour was the longest of Rose's life. She moved through the winter court surrounded by vampires who were curious, hostile, fascinated, and disdainful in equal measure. They asked her questions, some polite and some cutting. They tested her knowledge of vampire culture, her understanding of the implications of being Henrik's companion, her willingness to adapt to their world. Rose answered as honestly as she could, drawing on her years of experience managing difficult conversations and navigating emotional minefields. When a female vampire asked her how she could stand being so inferior to Henrik, Rose said, I'm not inferior. I'm different. Henrik is powerful and immortal, but I have strengths he doesn't. I understand grief and loss and the value of finite time in ways he can't because he's never faced mortality. We complement each other. When an older vampire asked her what she would do when she grew old and Henrik stayed young, Rose said, I don't know. Maybe I'll choose to join his world permanently. Maybe I'll choose to live my natural lifespan and let him remember me. Those are decisions we'll make together when the time comes. But I'm not going to avoid connection just because it's complicated. When Constantine himself asked her why Henrik should tie himself to someone so temporary, Rose looked him in the eye and said, "Because I'm real. I'm here, I'm present, and I make him feel something. Isn't that better than centuries of going through the motions? Isn't connection worth the risk of loss?" The hour stretched and stretched, but Rose held her ground. She was exhausted by the end of it, emotionally wrung out from the constant barrage of questions and judgment. But she didn't break. She didn't run. She stood in the middle of a vampire court and held her own. When Constantine finally called time, Rose felt like she might collapse with relief. Henrik was at her side instantly, his arm around her waist, holding her up. "Well?" Henrik asked Constantine, his voice tight. Constantine studied Rose with those cold blue eyes. Then he inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect. "She has passed. Your honored companion is stronger than she looks, Henrik. I will acknowledge your bond and withdraw my challenge. The Winter Court accepts Rose Zimmerman as your protected mortal." A murmur went through the crowd, some approving, some disappointed. But no one argued. Constantine's word was law in his court. "Thank you," Henrik said stiffly. "Do not thank me. Your mortal earned this herself." Constantine looked at Rose again. "You are welcome in the Winter Court, Rose Zimmerman, though I hope you will choose immortality eventually. It would be a shame to lose someone with your spine." "I'll keep that in mind," Rose said faintly. Henrik guided her out of the hall, back through the corridors, back to the car. The moment they were inside with the door closed, Rose started shaking. Henrik pulled her against him, holding her tight. "You were incredible," he murmured into her hair. "I have never seen anyone face down Constantine like that. You were fearless." "I was terrified," Rose admitted, her face pressed against his chest. "I thought I was going to throw up the entire time." "But you did it anyway. That is what true bravery is." Henrik pulled back slightly, cupping her face in his hands. "I am so proud of you, and so grateful. You did not have to endure that for me." "Yes, I did. Because I—" Rose trailed off, the words catching in her throat. "Because you what?" Henrik asked gently. "Because I'm falling for you," Rose whispered. "I know it's fast and complicated and probably stupid, but I can't help it. You've been taking care of me for months, and now I know you, and I care about you so much." Henrik's eyes were bright with emotion. "I have been falling for you since the first moment I saw you, walking through this building with your arms full of files, looking exhausted and determined and beautiful. I've been falling for you through every word you wrote in your notes, every moment I watched you help others carry their grief. I have been falling for you for months, Rose, and now that I have you, now that you are here beside me, I do not ever want to let you go." "Then don't," Rose said. "Keep me. I'm yours if you want me." "I want you," Henrik said fiercely. "I want you more than I have wanted anything in centuries." He kissed her then, finally, after months of longing and waiting and patient pursuit. His lips were cool against hers, and the kiss was gentle at first, questioning. Rose kissed him back, pouring all her relief and fear and growing love into it, and Henrik groaned softly, deepening the kiss. They kissed in the back of the vintage Rolls-Royce as it drove through tunnels beneath the city, and Rose felt like she was finally being seen, being held, being cherished. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Henrik rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me. Stay with me. Not just tonight, but always. Move into the penthouse. Be with me. Let me care for you properly." "That's fast," Rose said, but she was smiling. "I have waited centuries for you." "That is not fast. That is finally arriving at the destination." Rose laughed, giddy with relief and happiness and the lingering adrenaline from the Winter Court. "Okay, yes, I'll move in with you. I'll be your honored companion and your partner and whatever else you need me to be." "I need you to be yourself," Henrik said. "That is all I have ever needed." They returned to the penthouse as the city slept above them. Henrik showed Rose to his bedroom, which was as elegant and beautiful as the rest of his home, and they spent the night talking, kissing, learning each other. Henrik told her stories of his long life, and Rose told him about her childhood, her decision to become a counselor, the weight she carried from helping others grieve. "You do not have to carry it alone anymore," Henrik said, holding her close as dawn approached. "I am here. Let me help you bear it." "I'm not used to being taken care of," Rose admitted. "I know, but you will learn. And I will be patient, because that is what you deserve." As the sun rose, Henrik pulled the blackout curtains closed and settled into his bed with Rose in his arms. "Sleep," he murmured. "You are safe here. You are home." Rose closed her eyes, feeling the steady coolness of Henrik's body against hers, and felt herself relax completely for the first time in years. She was home. She was safe. She was loved. The days that followed were an adjustment. Rose kept her job, kept her appointments, but she moved her belongings into Henrik's penthouse. She learned to live in his space, to navigate his world, to balance her mortal life with her immortal partner. Henrik was endlessly patient, giving her space when she needed it and closeness when she craved it. He continued leaving roses on her desk every morning, a tradition he refused to break, even though they now shared a home. "I like the routine," he explained when Rose teased him about it. "I like knowing that every dawn you will walk into your office and find a reminder that you are loved." Rose's clients noticed the change in her. She was lighter somehow, less burdened. She still carried their grief with them, still helped them navigate their darkest days, but she no longer felt like she was drowning in it. She had someone to come home to, someone to talk to, someone who understood the weight she carried and helped her set it down. Winter deepened, and Seattle turned cold and white with snow. Rose had always hated winter, the way it made grief feel heavier, the way the darkness seemed endless. But this year was different. This year, she had Henrik. One evening in late December, Henrik found her standing on the rooftop garden, looking out at the snow-covered city. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The first rose," Rose said. "The morning after the bus crash, when I walked into my office and found it on my desk. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought the stress was finally breaking me." "Instead, you were finding me," Henrik said. "Or I was finding you. I'm still not certain which. Both, maybe." Rose turned in his arms to face him. The snow was falling gently around them, catching in Henrik's white hair, making him look like he was part of the winter itself. "I was so alone before you. I didn't even realize how alone I was until I wasn't anymore." "I was alone too," Henrik said quietly. "I had power and wealth and an entire court of people who served me, but I was profoundly alone. I'd not felt true connection in so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like. And then I saw you, this beautiful, strong, mortal woman, carrying everyone's pain like it was your purpose, and something in me woke up, something I thought I had lost centuries ago." "What was it?" Rose asked. "Hope," Henrik said simply. "You gave me hope that I could feel again, that I could care again, that I could be more than just a king managing territories and conflicts. You made me remember what it was like to be alive, even though I am technically dead." Rose smiled, reaching up to cup his face. "You're not dead. You're the most alive person I know." "Because of you," Henrik said. He kissed her softly, snow melting between them. "Because you saw me and did not turn away. Because you were brave enough to accept what I am and love me anyway." "I do love you," Rose said. "I know we haven't said it officially, but I do. I love you, Henrik Ravencroft." Henrik's smile was brilliant, joy transforming his face. "I love you, Rose Zimmerman. I have loved you since the first rose, and I will love you until the stars burn out." "That's a long time," Rose said. "Not long enough," Henrik replied. "Never long enough." They stood in the rooftop garden surrounded by roses blooming impossibly in the snow, and Rose felt her future unfold before her. There would be challenges, certainly. Learning to navigate Henrik's world fully, dealing with vampire politics, making decisions about her own mortality. But they would face those challenges together, because they had found each other against all odds, a vampire king and a mortal counselor. It shouldn't have worked. But it did. 3 months later, in early spring when the garden burst into full bloom, Henrik proposed to Rose in that same rooftop space. He didn't get down on one knee, too traditional for someone who'd lived as long as he had. Instead, he simply took her hand as they walked among the roses and said, "Marry me. Be my partner in all things, my companion, my love. Let me spend the rest of your life and perhaps beyond, showing you how much you mean to me." Rose said yes without hesitation. They married in the garden at dawn, with only a handful of witnesses. Chen from HR, who Rose had become friends with, a few of Henrik's most trusted court members, and Margaret Hollis, the mother who'd lost her son in the bus crash, who had become one of Rose's closest confidants. It was small and private and perfect. As the sun rose on their wedding day, Henrik stood with Rose in the light despite the discomfort it caused him, because he wanted to share that moment with her. He wanted to stand in the dawn and commit himself to her with nothing hidden, nothing held back. "You're going to burn," Rose whispered, worried. "I'm already burning," Henrik replied, "with love for you. A little sunlight is nothing compared to that." They kissed as husband and wife, surrounded by roses, and Rose felt complete in a way she never had before. She had spent so long taking care of others, making space for their grief, holding herself together through sheer determination. And now she had someone who took care of her in return, who saw her exhaustion and her strength and loved both. "I have a gift for you," Henrik said as they descended from the roof, the sun now too strong for him to remain outside. He led her to a room in the penthouse she'd never been in before, unlocking it with an old-fashioned key. Inside was an office, beautiful and perfect, with a large desk facing windows that overlooked the city. There were bookshelves and comfortable chairs and everything she needed to work from home when she wanted to. And on the desk, in a crystal vase, was a single white rose. "I know you love your work," Henrik said. "I would never ask you to give it up, but I wanted you to have a space here, in our home, where you could rest between appointments, where you could take care of yourself the way you take care of everyone else." Rose turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "You built me an office." "I built you a sanctuary," Henrik corrected, "a place that is yours, in the home that is ours. You give so much of yourself away, Rose. You deserve a place to come back to restore yourself." Rose threw her arms around him, holding tight. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Henrik murmured into her hair. "More than I have words to express, you have given me something I thought I lost centuries ago, a reason to hope, a reason to dream, a reason to wake each night with joy rather than just duty. You have made my immortality feel like a gift again, rather than a burden." They stood in Rose's new office, holding each other, and Rose thought about the journey that had brought them here. The bus crash, the grief, the first rose appearing on her desk like magic, the months of mystery and notes and slow courtship, the revelation of Henrik's nature, the challenge from Constantine, the choice to step into a world she'd never known existed. Every step had been terrifying. Every choice could have ended differently. But Rose had been brave, and Henrik had been patient, and somehow they had found their way to each other. "What happens now?" Rose asked. "Where do we go from here?" "Anywhere we want," Henrik said. "Everywhere we want. I will show you my world, all the places I have lived and loved. We will build a life together, Rose, full of roses and books and quiet moments and grand adventures. We will face the future as partners, making decisions together about what it looks like." "Will I become a vampire?" Rose asked. "Eventually." "Only if you choose to. I will not pressure you either way. If you want to live a mortal life, to age naturally and know that ending, I will treasure every moment with you. If you want to join me in immortality, I will turn you myself and spend centuries teaching you how to thrive in this world. The choice is entirely yours, and you have time to make it." Rose nodded slowly. She didn't know yet what she would choose. The idea of immortality was tempting, especially now that she had Henrik, now that she had a partner who would walk through eternity with her. But she also understood the weight of forever, the responsibility of it. She would need time to think, to decide what she truly wanted. But that was a decision for another day. For now she had Henrik and roses and a beautiful life unfolding before her. Years passed. Rose continued her work as a grief counselor, helping others navigate their darkest moments. Henrik continued ruling his vampire territories, managing the delicate balance between the mortal world and his own. And together, they built something beautiful, a partnership rooted in mutual respect, deep love, and the kind of trust that only came from truly seeing each other. On Rose's 35th birthday, 7 years after the first rose appeared on her desk, she made her decision. She stood in the rooftop garden with Henrik, surrounded by blooming roses and the scent of spring, and said, "I want to stay with you, forever. I want to choose immortality." Henrik's eyes shone with emotion. "Are you certain? You cannot undo this choice once it is made." "I'm certain," Rose said. "I have lived a full mortal life. I have helped hundreds of people, made a difference in the world I was born into. But I am ready for the next chapter. I am ready to explore immortality with you, to see what we can build together when time is no longer a constraint." "Then I will turn you," Henrik said, "but not tonight. First, we will have a celebration. We will gather the people you love and say goodbye to your mortal life properly. You deserve that closure, that transition." They spent the next month preparing. Rose said goodbye to her mortal friends, carefully and without explaining the truth. She arranged for her position at the counseling center to be filled, training her replacement thoroughly. She settled her affairs, making peace with the life she was leaving behind. And then, on a night when the moon was full and the garden was in bloom, Henrik turned Rose in the place where they had married. It was painful and profound, her body dying and remaking itself, her senses expanding, her mortality burning away. Henrik held her through all of it, murmuring reassurance, anchoring her to the world as she transformed. When it was over, Rose opened her new vampire eyes and saw clearly for the first time. The world was brighter, sharper, more vivid than she'd ever imagined. She could hear Henrik's heart beating, slow and steady. She could smell the roses with impossible clarity. She could feel the night air on her skin like a caress. "How do you feel?" Henrik asked. Rose tested her new body, flexing her fingers, feeling the strength in her limbs. Powerful, alive, free. She looked at Henrik, seeing him with new eyes, seeing every detail of his face, the depth of his love written clearly in his expression. "And grateful. So grateful that you found me, that you left me roses, that you showed me this world was possible. Thank you for choosing me," Henrik said, "for choosing us, for being brave enough to step into the unknown." They kissed in the garden, vampire and vampire now, equals in every way. And as Rose pulled back, she saw the future stretching before them, centuries of nights, of love, of roses and books and quiet moments and grand adventures. A future built on patient courtship and genuine connection, on seeing each other truly and choosing each other anyway. "I love you," Rose said. "I love you," Henrik replied, "for all of time." And in the garden where white roses bloomed eternal, they began their forever. The end.